It's common knowledge that video games translate poorly to screenplay. Producers often don't know exactly why fans of the game love them so much. Games have lore, unique mechanics, and a visceral feel that can rarely be shown on screen. So watch along as we list down shows and movies that toss everything good about a video game out the window. First up, Max Payne. Let's start off with one of the more poorly received mainstream movies that was adapted from a video game. Before gaming industry titan Rockstar Games acquired the rights to the franchise, Max Payne was released in stores in July of 2001 by an up-and-coming developer called Remedy Entertainment. Starring Mark Wahlberg as the titular character, Max Payne was released in 2008 as a feature film to overwhelmingly negative reviews by critics and die-hard fans of the video game. And if you're a fan of the game, you know exactly what we're about to say. What were those demons? Norse mythology was a major chunk of the video game's lore, with an in-game performance-enhancing drug Valkyr named after the Valkyrie, female warriors in Norse mythology, and the company that produces the drug named Aesir, after the Norse pantheon of gods. While references are present in the movie, people were confused when the Valkyr drug seemingly caused hallucinations of large demonic creatures with wings that flew down at their prey and took them to, presumably, Hell or Valhalla. We're still confused. But that's just a small part of a larger problem that made fans of the game series hate the movie. With numerous plot inconsistencies, including the driving force behind Max's desire for revenge, being placed in the middle of the movie rather than in the beginning like the game it was based on, and a 15% Rotten Tomatoes rating to boot, it's easy to see that Max Payne the movie was a terrible adaptation of the video game. Next, both the Hitman movies. Right, where do we begin on this one? Continuing with movies that were adapted from video games, there were two feature films based on the well-reviewed Hitman games, one that released in 2007 and the other in 2015. If you're a fan of the video games, we're sorry, we couldn't recover from the movies either. We've seen the slick, no-nonsense, hyper-focused assassin take down high-profile targets across the world without flinching once. And in the movies, they just throw all of that out the window, the same way they did with Max Payne. Fans of the game who went to watch both the movies came out of the cinemas with a bad taste in their mouths. The movies essentially made Hitman a babysitter for damsels in distress, the outdated trope that plenty of movies in the past have been called out for. Both movies see Agent 47 escorting a woman from one location to another in the hopes of saving her from a dangerous enemy. Reminds you of Hitman Absolution, doesn't it? It's uncanny how similar both movies are to Hitman Absolution, which is probably why Absolution is considered the black sheep of the game series. Now, granted, the first game, Codename 47, didn't give Agent 47 a hugely complex personality, but by the time Silent Assassin, Contracts, and Blood Money were released, we'd grown to love the Bald Assassin for his various exploits around the world. The movies, however, took the Silent Assassin persona right out of 47 and made him a gun-toting maniac who reveals his face to thousands of onlookers and innocent civilians who could easily identify him later on. That's something Agent 47 would never, ever do, and that should have been a deal-breaker for anyone watching the movie. Again, it's a small part of a much larger problem of not remaining true to the source material. Now we have Legend of Zelda 1989. The Nintendo classic has left us awestruck since it was first released in 1986, and we followed the silent protagonist across the land of Hyrule to save Princess Zelda from the evil grip of Ganon. With an untitled sequel to Breath of the Wild on its way, let's take a look at something that's not often talked about, or rather, something that we've tried to forget but can't. In fall of 1989, a 13-episode TV series titled Legend of Zelda was released, and boy did everybody hate it. Longtime fans of the series were shocked at the characterization of Link. Silent, yet stoic demeanor from the game is replaced by obnoxious, borderline creepy behavior. His catchphrase, "Excuse me, princess," became an internet meme. Luke Plunkett of Kotaku's Luke Plunkett mentioned, among other things, that the inferior animation, poor voice acting, and poor writing made the TV series among the worst cartoons of that decade. And we think it's still true now. In one very scathing review, a critic of the show mentioned how blatantly Link harasses Zelda, going so far as to comment on her cleavage and asking for a kiss again and again, even though she refuses every time. If that wasn't enough, he even blocks her path until he's given what he wants. And that's just episode 1. Need we go on? Next up, Street Fighter, the animated series, 1995 to 1997. We remember taking control of Ryu in the original Street Fighter released in 1987 and going toe-to-toe with Ken, living out our fantasies of being hard-as-nails fighters with unrelenting strength. The series brought us countless hours of joy as we played multiplayer mode with friends long into the night, often leaving us with red eyes and a head full of memories. So naturally, the beloved series was turned into a TV show that ruined ruined everything. In 1995, USA Network aired Street Fighter, the animated series, and despite going on for 2 whole seasons, it was poorly received by critics. The 2 main characters, Ryu and Ken, despite being tough, honorable fighters in the games, are reduced to comic relief characters in the TV show, acting goofy and ruining the audience's perception of their original characterization. That's not the end of it though. Characters often overact and exaggerate their expressions, and combined with the subpar animation, it makes even the most serious scenes quite funny, with several publications listing the show as one of the worst abominations ever. We sure won't disagree with them. Now we have Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time 2010. When Disney released the trailer for Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, everybody had one thought in their mind: how bad will it be? The beloved Prince of Persia games were not only magical, but introduced us to a character with shoulder-length black hair who could scale up the side of walls and fight several enemies at once. Originally adapted for the Apple II, it quickly became one of the most ported video games ever. One of the main reasons why the movie failed to make a name for itself was, to put it simply, whitewashing the characters of the original game. LA Times published an article which stated bluntly that none of the cast was of Middle Eastern, Iranian, or even Muslim descent. Look, we love Jake Gyllenhaal, but the casting director of the movie should have looked elsewhere to find a suitable face for Dastan. You know, since it's the Prince of Persia? Gyllenhaal later expressed his regret in starring in the movie, stating that it's one of the mistakes an actor makes in his or her career. Even though the movie was the highest-grossing video game movie at the time, before being surpassed by World of Warcraft, it still, nonetheless, did not make as much money as intended, and retaining a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes and an audience score of just 58%, which is not good from a summer blockbuster standard, Sands of Time remains as one of the more terrible video game movies for us. Up next, Postal 2008. This movie was directed by none other than Uwe Boll. That should be enough for this section, right? Can we end it here? No? Okay, let's just start with the beginning. The movie opens with a funny take on the September 11 attacks. Yikes! This is strike 3 already. But that's not all. There's an amusement park where women wear bikinis and Hitler mustaches. And it finishes with George Bush launching nukes against Pakistan and China. We'll just repeat the words of Aaron Hills of The Village Voice for this movie: poorly framed, tone-deaf, and nonsensical. Yeah, that's about it. Now we have Alone in the Dark 2005. Last but not least, we have another one from the director of Postal. Remember how bad the last one was? Yeah, well, with Alone in the Dark, we were given Boll's worst adaptation of a video game. While the game was well received by critics, who cited the eerie graphics and unsettling tone of the game as one of its best qualities, the movie, however, was another story. Wait, did we say Boll's worst adaptation of a video game? We meant one of the worst movies ever made, let alone a video game adaptation. It has a hilarious 1% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and the director was also awarded the Razzie Award for Worst Director for his part in directing the movie. Not only did the movie make us laugh, rather than thrill us or scare us, it was also poorly acted, poorly shot, and had poor special effects. And there's also the small matter of it not staying true to its source material, which, you know, is important in making a good video game adaptation. This was a tough one to decide because there's a whole catalog of terrible movies and shows based on video games, and some that are so bad, they're good. That's all for today. Till next time.